This may be a controversial opinion, but I think that Prue Leith is a way better judge on Great British Bake Off than Mary Berry ever was, and I will no clip from reality on that hill. And now I'm going to not so delicately segue from that into the fact that this video is about running a bakery in The Sims 3 versus The Sims 4 and seeing which one is best. So yes, welcome to another video of thinking way too much about The Sims. I'm your host, who is on a mission to help you find fun and meaningful experiences in your favorite cozy games. So I guess let's get into it. Let's start by getting the background and stuff like that out of the way. To run a bakery in The Sims 3 without mods, you will need the deliciously indulgent bakery venue set, which can be bought from the Sims 3 store for 1,900 sim points. As you need to buy a minimum of 2,040 sim points to get this, this would run you about £12 or your regional equivalent, so not super cheap, but it won't break the bank. However, if you want to find out a little bit more about how you can get this for less, check out the video linked above in the cards right now or in the description. The deliciously indulgent bakery venue set of course comes with the pre-made bakery lot, which is gorgeous, but as it's so big, I don't always think it's the most practical lot to use, and it's super expensive, so buying it without cheats would take a long time. So to build your own, you'll specifically need the Baker's Bazaar collection included in that store set, which unfortunately can't be bought individually anymore. In The Sims 4, the ability to run a bakery is subsumed within the retail system introduced with the Get to Work expansion pack. At full price, the pack costs $34.99 or I believe $40. As it was The Sims 4's very first expansion pack, I'm assuming that a lot of players have it by now, but if you don't, I wouldn't suggest buying any pack at full price. Every month or so, Get to Work will go on sale for about half price, so I'd suggest waiting until then to get it if you're interested in being able to run your own bakery and obviously play around with the other careers that pack adds to the game. Okay, so I had some high hopes for The Sims 3, but honestly getting the bakery set up took me far longer than expected and was quite finicky to do as well, but I'll give you the shortcuts from what I learned right now. So once you've got your bakery lot built, you want to designate it as a hangout lot type. This will make it so that your sim can purchase the lot and have a little bit more control over it in that way. However, I have heard some players running a bakery that their household doesn't own when the lot is set to visitors allowed. Now, I don't know if it was just my game being buggy, but despite adding a kitchen to my bakery lot, I couldn't cook anything there. In order to pick up and move the dishes I made using the bakery station, I had to make them on my home lot next door, then move them directly from my Sims inventory to the refrigerator and shelving stands. So then, as I alluded to earlier, to make this lot actually function as a bakery, you need to place the till included in the Baker's Bazaar collection, but I'd also highly recommend using the refrigerator stand and tool shelving unit which came with that set, as these slow down the expiration process of the food that you place in them. And unlike The Sims 4, I believe you actually need these to designate the items in them for sale, as you don't have the individual function to be able to do that like you do in The Sims 4. Let's start then with actually running the bakery in The Sims 3. So there were a few variables that I kept consistent across my playtesting. First, I played with just one sim who started with no cooking skill or baking skills in The Sims 4's case. I kept my Sims needs frozen so that I could completely focus on the business. I started with only about 100 simoleons as a minimal running cost, and I played in each game for about 5 days. But saying that, because I was entirely unfamiliar with running a bakery in The Sims 3, I accidentally spent an extra day at the beginning of the testing to kind of figure things out and see how stuff worked. So to day one then, I spent the whole night using the baking station, and then I got to the register and tended it from about 9 AM to 5 AM the very next day. I know, let me explain. So basically the bakery was crickets until about 6 PM, then it was pandemonium, but almost everything was sold. I learnt a few functional notes on this first day. First, although you can technically set sale times using the register, they don't seem to do anything at all. I don't know if they just determine when an NPC will tend the counter if you have that selected, but next, tending the counter doesn't seem to do anything at all, because I noticed baked goods being sold even when my sim wasn't tending it. I also couldn't seem to be able to lock the doors on my lot, so I just deleted any access to the the back and teleported my sim behind the counter each time to maintain a sense of realism, making sure that everybody is where they're meant to be. But moving on, I spent the first half of day 2 baking some more stock because there is no restocking like that which we find in The Sims 4 in a little while. If you want more stock, you've got to make it. This day was pretty profitable. I think I made around about 400 simoleons, and the venue was pretty populated, at least way more than the first day, which was nice to see. Everything was sold out by the much more sociable time of 7 p.m, then it was straight back home to bake throughout the night. And quite honestly, this was how the cycle repeated until Friday, which was the 5th and final day of running the bakery in The Sims 3. I'll say how much I earned throughout the week towards the end of this video, but one of my last functional notes before I move on to The Sims 4 was the fact that I was a little bit disappointed to see that there seemed to be minimal variation in the sales prices of baked goods. So as my sim progressed up the cooking skill, the new items I made, which were unlocked at these higher skills, didn't seem to sell for a notable amount more than the ones that were automatically unlocked at level 1. I don't think it even mattered if I had to pay to make the items or if the quality even played a notable role in the sale price, so that was a little bit disappointing to see, to be honest. Moving on to The Sims 4 then, setting up the bakery in this game was so much faster. I slapped together my sim, Flan Baker, dumped her in Daisy Hovel, then jumped straight into the gallery to find a bakery to plop down across the street. I found this really lovely one that a player had made called Pink Flavour Bakery. The origin ID and the name of the lot will be dropped in the description below so you can find it yourself a little bit easier if you'd like to have it in your own game. Then back in live mode, I went to the retail tab and bought the lot, and then I literally didn't leave it for the next 5 days, so get used to seeing this screen right here. As I was already slightly more familiar with The Sims 4's retail system, I didn't end up needing a day to test like I did with The Sims 3. So I just got straight to baking all of the most basic stuff that I could. Here, I was really reminded of just how disjointed the baking mechanics are in the game. First, you have the items you can cook on the oven through the cooking skill. Then you have the stuff you can cook on the oven through the baking skill that was added with Get to Work. Then you have stuff you can bake and cook using the cupcake machine, but you also cook some cupcakes on the oven for a totally different price. I think I got all of that right, but see where the confusion is coming in here. But anyway, day 1 I was open for about 8 hours and I barely made a profit because I was restocking as I went. There will be more on what I learned about restocking as we go, but instantly the day-to-day routine of running a bakery in The Sims 4, shockingly because I feel like I can't say this very often, is actually more in-depth and spoilers, more enjoyable than The Sims 3. There are just more little details like the fact that refrigerators get dirty and need cleaning, and that you can talk to customers to increase the rate at which they decide to purchase something. But this doesn't always go right. Sometimes talking to someone repeatedly will turn them off buying stuff instead. This was really nice in contrast to The Sims 3, where Sims would literally just decide to buy something. I had Sims buying multiple things. It just didn't seem to have much of an order to the process, I guess. But then in The Sims 4, you also have to ring up customers to confirm the sale, and if you aren't quick enough to do this, they'll actually get angry and leave. This talking system obviously isn't perfect because it's The Sims 4, and I did have some routing issues, but that might have been because the bakery is quite small. Also, unlike The Sims 3, everyone actually pisses off when the store closes. On the night of day 1 and very early morning of day 2, I spent the pennies that I'd earn on baking new stock. As I ran out of cash by 4 a.m, I just decided to open the store, and then obviously, because it's The Sims 4, everyone homing pigeoned to the shop despite it being 5 in the morning. I then stayed open for 16 hours and made around about 200 simoleons. Going into day 3, this cash meant that I could start strategizing a bit. Instead of just restocking all the cheap products that didn't make a lot of profit, I wanted to start phasing out this stuff and set aside a fridge for high quality, higher level recipes that I was then planning on restocking when needed. But by the end of day 3, after making 800 simoleons and unlocking more recipes as I was leveling up my cooking skill, I kind of realized that it was more strategic to actually bake new things rather than restock them, as you're still leveling up your cooking and baking skills because you're getting XP, and it seems to cost less than restocking. If you open your own bakeries, I'd suggest doing this until you can afford the cheaper restocking retail pack, which I believe is the most expensive one. Going into day 4, I was really realizing how much potential for a satisfying sense of scale could come out of this gameplay loop, as increasing your cooking/baking skills, unlocking new retail perks, and getting better at convincing customers to buy things means that you can gradually increase your profits. On this day, I increased the markup from 25% to 50%, and I definitely noticed Sims taking a bit longer to decide whether or not to buy items, which I really liked seeing, but it didn't matter considering that I literally made double the amount from the previous day anyway. Then the final day of selling followed a similar pattern, and then that was that. This leads me quite perfectly on to profitability then. From running the bakery for 5 days in The Sims 3, I made 1,700 simoleons or thereabouts, and honestly, surprisingly, considering how much I made on the first day, in The Sims 4 I made about 3,400 simoleons, and that was after spending a lot on restocking and making new product. So The Sims 4 clearly wins out in terms of profitability, but what about in terms of an overall experience? Again, I'm a little bit surprised to say that The Sims 4 really does win again. In The Sims 3, by day 5, I was ready to turn the game off because it was a lot of just speed 3ing through waiting for stuff to happen, while The Sims 4 was way more of an active experience that even now I have an itch to keep going with. The fact that I could reduce the cost of making product by having the raw ingredients in my Sims inventory is making me want to start a new rags to riches farm situation where I make a cute little self-sustaining farm shop and bakery, which maybe probably also sells flowers because I love The Sims 4's flower arranging skill. But honestly, this is literally the longest I've played The Sims 4 in months, maybe even over a year, so it feels nice to have that pull to get back into the game. As for The Sims 3, I'd say that owning your own bakery would be a fun distraction if you were playing a family that was flushed with cash, where a bakery would be way more of a side gig that was ran by hired NPCs to add a little bit more spice to your world. But unfortunately, I wouldn't recommend trying to turn it into a main quest like I did here today. The Sims 4, on the other hand, I think there's a lot of potential here, and again, I'm leaving this video wanting to explore more, and I found it to be a really meaningful gameplay experience overall. But that's about it for my silly Sims science today. If you fancy sticking around, check out this video on the screen in which I talk about a few more things that I think The Sims 4 does better than The Sims 3. But other than that, I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you again soon.